All right. See a couple people filtering in here. We're going to wait till the top of the hour, maybe a minute after, let some folks jump in, and then we'll get started. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Feel free to let us know where you're joining from in the chat.
Oh, you know what? I need to make the chat available to everyone.
Oh.
Okay, now let us know where you're joining from in the chat. All right. All right, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. I got a couple slides and then we'll push it over onto Carrie. So thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks, Carrie, for joining us. Thanks to all of our attendees. My name is Sammy Focarino. I'm the Senior Events Manager here at Consensus, and I'm going to be your moderator for today's session. Can you guys see my screen?
No, it says you started sharing, but I'm just seeing the phrases you started sharing.
Okay, let's try this one. How about now?
Much better.
Okay, wonderful. You can see Carrie's pretty face twice on the screen. Woo! All right. So this webinar is presented by Consensus. Consensus is intelligent demo automation software that helps scale pre-sales with interactive video demos. You can learn more at goconsensus.com. We had a great time last week at our first live event of the year in San Francisco, and now we're excited to be gearing up for Virtual Demo Fest happening May 23rd through 25th. Registration will open next week, but you can register interest now and also register for any of our other live events in Dublin, London, and New York City at demofest.com, which I will also post in the chat. All right, we encourage you to participate in today's webinar. Our speaker will answer any questions at the close of the event, but you're welcome to post your questions at any time through the Q&A box on the right side of your console. If at any time you're having technical difficulties, press the help button on the right side of your screen. And now I'd like to introduce our speaker. Carrie Sikowski is the founder and president of Presales Mastery, helping B2B software sellers win more deals with personalized one-on-one demo call coaching. Carrie has over 17 years of global pre-sales and sales enablement leadership experience at both dynamic software startups and Fortune 50 firms. An accomplished demo coach, he brings his clients both firsthand demo experience, having delivered over 1,000 custom enterprise demos over his career, along with a wide breadth of perspectives from working with dozens of pre-sales organizations across the globe. Carrie is also the founder of CITO, the Toronto chapter of SE Nation, and co-author with Chris Wright of the Pre-Sales Buyer Guide. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the rest of the time over to you, Carrie.
Thanks, Sam. I appreciate it. I am going to share my screen as well. Let's get that up. All right, let me know when you can see my screen.
We can see it.
Beautiful. All right, well, we can get my mug off of the screen because we've seen enough of that. So thanks everyone for joining today. We're going to, for those who know me, they know you'll know that I'm a massive fan of agenda slides. I like setting expectations accordingly, making sure people know what they're in for. So here's the agenda for today's session. So first, we're going to really quickly cover why are we even here? Why are we talking about this in the first place? We'll then get into a little bit of the psychology of non-cash rewards and why people either prefer or don't prefer them and why they work or don't work. Then we'll get into some of the options available to us in terms of what we can leverage in our compensation toolkit. And then we've put together a sort of very quick scorecard to help you gauge the health of how well you're leveraging non-cash rewards in your pre-sales organization. So we'll go through what that scorecard looks like. We'll even give you a chance to tally it up for yourselves and then compare notes with everybody else on the call. So without further ado, let's jump into this. All right, so why are we talking about non-cash rewards? Well, we're all aware of what happened last year. Over 150,000 people were laid off in the tech sector in 2022. Unfortunately, that trend is actually accelerating in 2023. There have already been, according to layoffs.fyi, over 121,000 layoffs in the first 3 months of 2023. So things are not necessarily getting any better. And unfortunately, with these layoffs, most of these firms are not revising their guidance to Wall Street. So basically, they've got smaller sales teams, fewer resources, fewer people, and yet everyone's being asked to do more than before because they're asked to hit the same numbers and the same goals and quotas that they had, which makes it harder to hit those targets, obviously. So if you couple that, it's harder to hit your number because your number's higher, right? With the fact that we're in a very challenging business environment, it becomes exceptionally difficult for these sellers to hit their numbers, which is going to lower people's overall take-home pay. And yet a lot of those people are worth keeping. And so when we think about the fact that, yes, pay is going down, earnings are going down, that even gets more compounded by the fact that cost of living continues to go up. Now, as pre-sales leaders, we absolutely have to retain our top performers. But how do you do that when you can't go to the CFO and ask for more money? Well, there are a lot of options available to us in the form of non-cash rewards that are very often valued even more than cash rewards by employees. But how does that actually work? So let's dig in. So what I want to do is I want to start with a quick poll. And Sammy, I'll tell you when to bring it up in a second here. But let's say that you've just won an Employee of the Year award, and your company gives you 3 options to choose from. Each has the exact same $5,000 value. Option 1 is a 100-inch OLED 4K TV, top of the line. Option 2 is a luxury cruise for 2. And option 3 is $5K in cash. Which would you choose? Sammy, can you bring up the first poll and we'll So again, assume everything's worth the same amount. What would you choose here? Just give everyone a couple seconds to do it. And Sammy, I think you're going to probably have to share the results with us when we're done.
Will do. All right, looks like we're slowing down here. So we have 85% of you have participated so far. That's a good participation number. We like to see that. So if you're okay with it, Carrie, we looked like we pretty much slowed down.
Let's pull it up.
All right.
Peter's excited about the cash. All right, so not surprisingly, almost 3/4 chose cash. Cruises can be argued. Some people, cruising is not for everybody, so maybe that should have just been sort of a vacation and be a little more universal. And we clearly have some sports fans in the room that pick the TV. But what's really interesting is, and we think about why cash is really a common preference, is that cash has what's called optionality assigned to it. And it gives you the option to decide what you want to do. To Peter's comment in the chat, he can spend it how he wants, right? We're not telling you how you should obviously use the benefits of the reward that you're getting. So the reason I asked this is a few years ago, some researchers from the University of Waterloo in Canada and Wichita State University in the US conducted a study where they asked participants to make the same choice: cash, a high-def TV, and a cruise. So I'm going to bring up another poll with the exact same options, and I'm curious to see what everyone thinks the majority of the people in that study selected. So this isn't your own personal preference. What do you think the majority of the people in that poll selected?
All right, 77% participation. We're looking good. 80%.
I love the engaged audience. This is awesome.
I know. All right, looks like we're slowing down here. So
all right, let's bring it up.
I'm gonna go ahead and bring it up for you guys.
Jake has a great question in the chat. Does Canada tax non-cash comp as bad as we do? So interestingly, It depends. So Canada does not charge for things like lottery winnings or stuff like that. So I don't know the answer to that, to be honest. I don't think they do, but I'd want to do some research and get back to you on that one, Jake. All right. So interestingly, only half of you thought that people chose cash. Clearly, we all think that there's more people out there that like luxury cruises than the amount that we actually like. And so what happened? Well, similar to your own personal preferences, 2/3 of the survey respondents selected cash, and primarily for the reason we talked about is that optionality. But the researchers then flipped the question and they asked the participants to select the option that they'd be most happy to receive. And coincidentally or not, the results were flipped. Most of them chose the TV or the cruise as the option that would make them happiest to receive. And why is that? Well, this research study did some extensive work that compared cash and non-cash incentives and motivation in the workplace. And they found that employees actually prefer non-cash rewards for 4 primary reasons. And we're going to cover those now. All right, so what's the first? Well, one of the nice things about non-cash rewards is they provide employees things that they typically see as luxuries, items that we wouldn't necessarily buy for ourselves, even if we did have the money. And if the reward is something the employee highly values but can't justify buying on their own, then the chance to earn it as a reward for their efforts provides a way for them to sort of get that item without having to compromise their own sort of internal rules of justification, right? Essentially, people feel guilty over the purchase and consumption of what you consider, let's say, frivolous items or luxury items. And often that is due to the opportunity cost of what else they could have done with that money, right? To Peter's earlier point on an optionality, and I can choose what I want. That guilt doesn't exist when they've earned the item as a reward for hard work. If we go back to that previous example from the study, if someone's gifted a 100-inch TV, they may be thrilled with it, but had the reward just been the $5K in cash needed to buy the TV, well, now all of a sudden they have a decision to make, right? Should they buy the TV, or now they got to think about, should I pay off the credit card? Should I invest in my kids' college savings accounts? Sure, all of us have lots of other options. We may not even be the sole decision maker. We probably have to involve our spouse or other people, right? And so as a tangible reward, the employee can justify the TV without guilt. So that's the first one, justifiability. The second reason is social reinforcement. So what does that mean? Well, one of the main drivers of reinforcement theories of motivation is the idea that rewarding certain behaviors tends to lead to more of the same behavior. If we reward you for hitting your number, doing something really well, you'll want to typically continue to want to hit your number and do those things again. Now, with tangible non-cash rewards, beyond the consumption value of the reward itself, employees also realize social reinforcement or trophy value. Basically the recognition and acknowledgement of their performance by their colleagues, their family, their friends. So now more people are reinforcing that they've done a great job or accomplished something exceptional in order to get that reward because they can see it in front of them, right? Basically, non-cash rewards represent a tangible symbol of achievement that isn't really possible with a cash bonus. You don't see that cash bonus necessarily. Now, interestingly, people tend to talk about non-cash rewards in ways that would be socially inappropriate for cash compensation. Colleagues or friends may ask about the new golf clubs you won, but they're probably not going to ask you about the $1,000 cash prize you got or how you spent it. Similarly, it's usually socially unacceptable to brag about your bonus or commission, but totally acceptable to talk about that trip you won to Maui. And if you ever needed a better example of how impressed people can be about you winning a trophy, even a global star like Drake turns into a complete stan when he sees that symbol of accomplishment. And as a Torontonian, I had to do the shout out to the Raptors championship parade here. All right. Number three is this idea of separability. Now, what is that? Well, people tend not to consider all of their income collectively. And what that means is you will often segregate some sources of income and aggregate others into different so-called mental accounts. So, for example, dividends and other investment income tends to be considered separate from your salary. And when we aggregate income like this, we tend to assign a value to any incremental of that income that we get relative to whatever else is in that mental account. There's also lots of research that shows that there is diminishing marginal utility in additional earnings. Basically, the value of each additional dollar earned goes down as your total pay increases. So if we earn a cash bonus, we tend to consider it as more salary. Now, suppose we earn a $1,000 cash bonus, but our salary is $100,000. We tend to think of the bonus as just a 1% increase in our salary. 1% doesn't necessarily sound all that substantial. The reward basically falls victim to diminishing marginal utility. A tangible incentive, on the other hand, is less susceptible to this problem. Basically, they're consumed less frequently and because of that, they're more likely to be evaluated in isolation or placed into a smaller mental account, things like entertainment. So for example, if you tend to spend about $500 a year on sporting events, I'm embarrassed to admit I spend a lot more than that, but then you win box seats to a playoff game for your team that are worth $1,000. All of a sudden, that same $1,000 that cash reward we talked about a second ago that wasn't so impressive as a 1% increase in salary, now that $1,000 reward represents a 200% gain over what you'd normally allocate to that type of spend. So the $1,000 worth of tickets is comparatively much more valuable to most people than the same $1,000 in cash. Fourth idea is this really weird word to say, evaluability. And that is that cash has a fixed value. We all look at $1,000 in cash and say, that's worth $1,000. But the value of non-cash incentives can be ambiguous. What the researchers in this study found was that the harder an employee works for a non-cash reward, the more they tended to perceive it to be worth, regardless of its consumption value. They basically attributed the effort going into that reward as augmenting how much it was worth to them. Now, an interesting extension to this is the idea of scarcity, or that some rewards, like those box seats we just talked about, are often unobtainable personally, and therefore carry far greater value for the employee, regardless of their price tag. Because they can only acquire them by being a top performer at their firm, they hold scarcity value. So probably one of the most well-known examples of this, Mary Kay's pink Cadillacs, right? Which aren't available for purchase in that color. The only way to get them is if you're a Mary Kay top performer. Now we can argue whether you really want a pink Cadillac or not, but the idea being is those who do will value it substantially higher because there's only one way to do it, being a kick-ass seller of cosmetics. So those were the four reasons, but somebody, Mike May of a company called Bright Spot Incentives, proposed an additional reason that non-cash rewards work so well. And that is the idea of the fact that they're more memorable. They have what he calls the halo effect. And there's a lot of surveys and research that shows that merchandise and travel rewards are remembered longer than cash. And therefore, they result in longer lasting boosts in performance, which ultimately is what we're trying to do when we're rewarding people. We're trying to reinforce those behaviors so they continue to do them again. So basically what happens is with non-cash rewards, they're providing a lasting reminder of that success. It's in front of them. They can see it. It doesn't just go away into their bank account and disappear. It's reinforcing that positive association. And so we tend to remember those things like, for example, the amazing President's Club trip that we went on. But again, that cash bonus that we had 4 years ago, we probably don't remember what that was. All right, so non-cash incentives don't just include tangible rewards. Recognition is an incredibly efficient and effective technique to drive performance. And the best part is it costs absolutely nothing, as we all know. Employee recognition is more than just a thank you for doing a good job. It's something our brains are hardwired to need. Recognition results in the release of dopamine, which creates positive emotions like satisfaction and enjoyment. Because of this, it shouldn't come as a big surprise that employee recognition results in higher levels of motivation, engagement and productivity, lower staff turnover, and an increased ability to retain and attract top talent. Research has shown that employees who receive strong recognition are 33% more likely to be proactively innovating within their organizations. Companies with recognition programs that are effective at improving employee engagement have 31% lower voluntary turnover. And organizations with highly engaged employees achieve unbelievably twice the annual net income of those whose employees lag behind in that measure. So basically, treat your employees well, recognize them, and they return the favor by being more productive and positive team members. Okay, so that's the psychology of non-cash rewards. Let's get into what's in our toolbox here. And so, look, definitely recognize most of us in sales and in pre-sales, we are in sales, are primarily coin operated. And you can see a lot of the different financial compensation levers on the left here. There are a lot of different ones that we can use, but again, often not in play in situations like we find ourselves in with the current economic environment. There are, however, lots of meaningful non-financial compensation mechanisms at our disposal. So we just talked about the power of recognition, but what does that ultimately mean for pre-sales? Well, if we think about best practices, my own personal advice is boiling it down to one thing. Make sure that pre-sales is equally celebrated as compared to their sales counterparts. How many times have you seen a win report that celebrates your account executive for winning the deal, and the solution consultant is only mentioned down on page 4 near the end as one of the many people who supported the deal? What's the downside of giving the SE equal billing on that win report with the account executive? Well, here's a hint, there is none. And often all it takes is going to sales ops and asking them to make that change. And why is that important? Well, aside from the aforementioned reasons, win reports are usually distributed company-wide. By deprecating pre-sales to a support function, that's how the entire company sees them, which further perpetuates the myth that pre-sales purpose is to support the real stars of the show in sales, and that pre-sales efforts and contributions are somehow inferior to the sellers that they work with. Callouts to praise our team's accomplishments and recognizing our appreciation of their efforts can be just as impactful. And the same concept applies. Make them on par with sales. Whether it's formal employee recognition programs or team, divisional, or all company meetings, if sales is being recognized, pre-sales should be as well. One technique I've seen that is incredibly effective is the public shout out, right? Or public call outs, for example, on LinkedIn. Essentially recognizing an SE winning an award or doing some other great accomplishment for the team. Not only does that tell the employee that they are valued enough that you as their manager want the world to know about them and about what they've done, it actually also serves a secondary benefit for us as pre-sales leaders. It can be an effective recruiting tool. After all, employees really want to work, right, for great companies, but they also want to work for great managers, like those who will recognize and celebrate their team's successes. So by seeing a manager shout out their SEs on LinkedIn, you're actually telling prospective new hires that they'll be valued at their firm or at your firm. Okay, so this next one tends to hit a nerve. I wanted to do a quick poll here. I'm curious to get a sense of pre-sales participation in President's Club at everyone's firm. Sammy, can you bring up the third poll here? All right, so please let us know if pre-sales is eligible for President's Club, is ineligible, or you don't even have a President's Club in the first place.
All right. Really high on participation on this poll. Woohoo. All right, we're at 88% participation. So, and we're kind of slowing down. So I'm gonna go ahead and close it and show you guys the results.
All right, so I'm encouraged to see that half of organizations have eligibility for pre-sales. I'm loving Aaron's comment in the chat here that fourth choice is an afterthought. President's Club. So interestingly, only 14% is pre-sales is not eligible. So of the 64% where there is a President's Club, it looks like a little less than 25% or a quarter pre-sales is not eligible for it. Right, so that's not bad. That's actually better than I expected, right? But what's the best practice if you have a President's Club? And again, same sort of thing, make sure that pre-sales is an equal participant. And what does that mean? Well, the easiest proxy is representative participation. In an organization where pre-sales holds individual quotas, that typically means setting equivalent achievement to quota qualifications for both sales and pre-sales. In organizations where pre-sales is compensated based on team quotas or where they don't receive commissions at all, which unfortunately is the majority of pre-sales organizations, it's often not quite as clear who from pre-sales should qualify. So my first advice is start off by determining the right number of people from pre-sales that should attend. If 10% of the sales team qualifies, then 10% of pre-sales should also be qualifying. Then come up with some predefined method that is clear and defensible. For example, it could be whichever SCs have the highest percentage of the deals that they were attached to that close. Everybody's business is very unique. How everyone's pre-sales teams work within your go-to-market motions is different. So can probably give some advice on specific situations, but it's going to be very different for each organization, obviously. Bottom line is, though, there's almost nothing more demoralizing for a pre-sales team than seeing pictures of their sales counterparts celebrating on a beach for the success that pre-sales equally contributed to, but wasn't eligible for. If your company has rewards like Salesperson of the Year or some other equivalent, create the same awards for pre-sales, right? Not hard to do. We'll talk a little bit later about what some other ways you can leverage that as best practices too. So there's lots of other tools and rewards can be leveraged as well. Most companies have some sort of professional development or ongoing education credits that they make available. And the nice thing about these is they hold the dual benefit of not only upskilling your SEs, but investing in their long-term value, which coincidentally most employees massively value and is usually a deciding factor in a lot of cases on which organizations they're going to join. Giving access to special or unique opportunities are ways to show SEs that they're especially valued. Examples could include representing the company at conferences or events, or representing the team on a cross-functional or strategic initiative. But be careful here. What management considers a special opportunity may be viewed by the SE as just another set of responsibilities that they have to deliver on. For example, assigning ownership and responsibility for building and maintaining a vertical specific demo model may not get your SEs all that excited and could actually have the opposite effect. Award point programs like WorkTango, Nectar, Motivosity, and Bonusly, for example, which serve a dual purpose of recognizing employees for their performance and other contributions, both from management and from their peers, and provide the ability for those employees to earn points for redemption from gift catalogs, can be really useful. Because these solutions make it really easy for anybody in the organization to recognize their colleagues, they tend to have numerous benefits, including increased productivity, better company culture, more collaboration, higher retention, and improved relationships among coworkers, and overall happier employees. When you bring everybody in the organization into the appreciation and recognition game, it makes it go that much further. Paid vacation time can be a huge motivator and has an added benefit. But before we continue, I'm going to ask anyone from HR watching this to please turn off your speakers for a second. For anyone who's seen Old School, the movie Old School, it's earmuffs time here. It often doesn't really require permission from HR to do this. What's to stop you as a manager from simply telling your employee to take an extra day off without officially reporting it as a vacation day? In most cases, probably nothing. Okay, HR folks, you can turn your volumes back up. Swag or company gear is usually highly valued by employees and has the added value of actually helping to promote your organization. It also is usually already on hand, so it's not something you have to go out and spend more money on to actually distribute to your team. Perks can be just about anything, from experiential rewards like tickets to a sporting event or a spa day, flexibility in working conditions like allowing irregular working hours or more autonomy, or even things like lunch or dinner with the CEO or CRO. Bottom line, there are lots of options available to effectively increase compensation without having to justify to finance why you want to pay someone more money. And yes, even if some of these non-cash rewards have an actual financial cost to the company, they are almost always one-time costs. Unlike offering a raise to an employee that perpetuates year over year, it's a lot easier to convince finance to do a one-off than it is to increase their overall and recurring base of costs. So we've covered a lot of options here, but what does good look like from a pre-sales perspective? So I took 6 of these items and put together a quick, rough scorecard that you can use to identify how effectively you're leveraging non-cash rewards and where you may want to tweak what you're doing. All right, now this is obviously going to vary greatly by organization, but hopefully this gets the point across here about how you might more effectively recognize and reward your team with non-cash rewards. So let's look at the first one, right? So the first one is basically the idea of company callouts, right? On company calls, or recognizing them on your team calls, whatever it happens to be. Well, you get 0 stars if you're not including pre-sales in these types of shout-outs. I've seen lots of organizations that have salesperson of the year, or they will start off these calls with shouts to people who've done great stuff. If pre-sales isn't included, massively demoralizing. 1 star is we're recognized in a group with sales. So they maybe are calling out the sales team as a whole for closing a particular deal. 3 stars is pre-sales is individually and separately recognized. So we're called out for delivering an unbelievably creative and complex POC as part of closing that deal. We're specifically called out separately. All right, number 2. Programmatic callouts like win reports. Sort of mentioned this earlier, but basically 0 is you're not getting called out at all. Pre-sales isn't even mentioned in the win report. Terribly demoralizing. 1 star, like I talked about earlier, the account exec's still getting main billing. Pre-sales is kind of lumped in. They are mentioned, but they're lumped in as a supporting function along with others. 3 stars is they're giving top billing along with the account executive. Congratulations to Debbie and Steve for closing Acme Corp, and then talk about the rest of the stuff around the win report. All right, next. President's Club. We talked about it. Pre-sales isn't eligible, about 25% of you that actually have President's Club. 1 star is we are eligible, but it's more a token participation. We're asked to send 1 or maybe 2 people. 3 stars is we have equal representation as sales. So again, if sales has 10% of their team going, pre-sales should have 10% of our team going. All right, Employee of the Year rewards. So ineligibility, not so great. right? 1 star is you have a pre-sales member of the year, and people would say, well, that should be great. Like, why isn't that 3 stars? Well, to me, 3 stars is not only do you have pre-sales person of the year, but pre-sales is also eligible for salesperson of the year, recognizing that in most cases, we are equal partners with sales in closing all the deals we're working on. Next, professional development. So no professional development credit is obviously a 0 star. One is you do have a credit, but we as a company are going to give you the options available to you and how you choose to deploy that credit. 3 stars is we're giving you the credit and we're letting you decide how to best improve your future long-term value and professional development. You can spend it however you choose. And last is special opportunities. So not having any opportunities, obviously 0 stars. 1 star is you get opportunities, but they're more focused on the company. We want you to man a booth at our customer conference next month. 3 stars is that they're given special opportunities that are focused on their benefits, right? Things that are primarily about the SC, less about the company and what the company can benefit from that particular opportunity. All right, so that wraps up the scorecard. I'm curious, because this should hopefully be pretty easy for people to decipher. I'm curious to see how you're currently scoring today. So Samuel, let's bring up the last poll. And if you aggregate out your team scores on this, where do you end up?
This one might take a little longer. It seems like we got to do some math.
There's a little bit of math there. I apologize. Should have started with that at the beginning.
All right. Seems like people are getting their calculators out. We're getting some participation here. We'll give them a little bit of extra time. Still rolling in, so just going to leave it up for a bit. All right, we got 50% participation, 51, 55. This is good. I'm impressed, honestly, when it comes to math.
Well, we're in pre-sales. Like, this should be pretty mathematically and logically oriented.
Very true, very true. Okay, we're at 66%. It's pretty high for a math question, so
yeah, let's
I'm impressed. All right, we're at 68. I'm going to go ahead and end it and share the results with you guys.
All right, so not terrible, but not great. Looks like about half are between 0 and 6 stars. There are about 7% which are killing it. If you're getting 13 or more stars on this, you're doing a very effective job of leveraging non-cash and recognition type rewards. In fact, anything 10 or higher, I would say you should be proud of what's going on. For those folks who scored sort of 9 stars or less, I would consider whether you can start to take advantage of some of these options. The benefit of a lot of these is most of them do not require any financial outlay on the company's part whatsoever. It can be really quickly implemented. They are all big wins when they happen. I would suggest if you are going to start to add these into your comp toolbox, that you consider rolling them out in a staggered fashion, because you're going to get a win internally for every one of them. So you may as well space them out and maximize out that goodwill that you get by improving how you're leveraging these with your team. And so with that said, that wraps up the webinar today. I do want to open it up for QA and answer any questions people have about non-cash rewards or anything comp related for that matter. Sammy, have there been any questions in the QA itself, or is it all just in the chat?
Not so far. So we have had a couple people. If you guys have questions, again, that Q&A box is the best way to do it. Carrie will answer them live here. So go ahead and jump those questions in there. There's been a couple questions in the chat about getting the slides, and I don't know the answer to that. I would imagine if you want to share the slides, maybe on a personal basis.
I'm more than happy to share the slides. do me a favor, send me an email at carrie@presalesmastery.com, and I will more than happy to send you the slides. I'll put the email in the chat here. Just make sure I spelled it correct there.
Woo, I just did it. We did it at the same
Oh,
time.
look at that. Well, actually,
All right. All right. Let's see here. I think you were just so thorough, Carrie, that there's not a lot of questions coming through the Q&A box.
Appreciate that. Yeah, Peter asked a good question, right? For those who do score high, do the scores correlate with the team's perception of their recognition? And that would be an interesting thing to check with your team, is how they feel they're being recognized internally, and see if that aligns with what you're actually doing. Great point, Peter. Just looking through the chat here.
Peter's asking, do you think pre-sales should be subject to the same quota constraints as sales?
Well, so Peter, that's a loaded question, as you well know. I do have strong opinions on it. Probably requires an entire other session. I've done a few sessions on that. I will say, and there's a question in the Q&A about when the consensus comp and workload report is going to come out this year. Based on last year's results, just over a quarter of pre-sales individual contributors had either had a individual quota component to their comp plans, either exclusively individual commissions or a hybrid. Some of their variable was an individual, some was with team. I think it depends on your go-to-market motions, depends on your competitive realities. But my personal take, and I've done a lot of talking about this, I can point people to the recordings if they're interested, is that for most organizations, you're going to have better results if you have at least some component of individual comp.
We got another question regarding the sales engineering and compensation and workload report. Hopefully soon. We are working on it, so hopefully soon. I don't have an exact date for you guys. Sorry. We got another question that came through. If the SC team is really good at recognition, does it provide the same value even though the overall organization is not as good at SC recognition? Does that make sense?
A great question, Ruth. It absolutely makes sense. Sounds like, internally amongst your team, you're doing a great job of recognizing people's accomplishments and contributions, but the organization as a whole is probably not. And I would say it's a great start for sure. It's certainly better than not recognizing at the team level, but you get substantially more uplift when it's recognized at an organizational level, simply because that organizational level recognition perpetuates across the organization. We hear way too often about the friction between sales and pre-sales, and are we being viewed as a strategic partner in our sales cycles? If the company is recognizing pre-sales, it becomes a way to perpetuate the idea that pre-sales is valued at an equal level as sales. If they're not, then despite the fact that you're recognizing them at a team level, they still may see themselves as deprecated to sales, which can be demoralizing. So I think the ideal is to try and get some sort of company level recognition wherever possible.
Awesome. Cool. How to reward someone who did an amazing job as pre-sales, but unfortunately the deal is lost. We need to keep great people and motivate them and in the team.
Yeah, a great question. We, thanks for that. I think that a lot of the time we do our best work on lost deals, unfortunately, and they're lost not because of what we do in pre-sales, which is unfortunate. I think that you're still able to recognize those contributions in a lot of different ways. And maybe it's things like, did someone come up with a creative new approach to solve a specific problem, or build something unique for that proof of concept in that particular compete that can then be leveraged somewhere else in our sales cycles. And it's those types of recognitions where the work is going to be leveraged in other opportunities to improve the chance of winning those other opportunities as a way to sort of celebrate the work that they've done, even though the deal didn't close. Like the comment, Peter, interesting to see rewards for pre-sales and bringing salespeople up to speed and successful. Yes, too often our best pre-sales people are crutches to not just uplift, but to save poor performing salespeople. And it would be great if we were recognized as such, for sure. Any other questions before we wrap?
Doesn't look like it. I think this one came through, but it's more of a comment. So kind of on that recognition on the technical win. Did you see that one? I think that's more of a comment.
Didn't catch that one.
It says enough recognition is not given to a technical win if the opportunity ends up as a loss. So basically kind of agreeing.
Yeah, I think that's, I think it's tough to recognize those when it's in the context of a loss at the company level. But I think if you can repurpose the lens through which you're looking at it as it was a new and unique approach that's going to be leverageable for other competes, then there's value that can be recognized despite the loss.
All right. I think that we're just at the end here. I don't think there's any more questions. If you guys do have more questions, I know Terry would probably be happy to connect with you guys on LinkedIn. His email's in the chat. Terry, was there anything else on your end that you wanted to cover?
No, thanks everyone for joining. Really appreciate it. As many of you know, I love talking about comp and pre-sales comp. I spent a decade in the comp management space. So if anybody's interested in chatting further, please reach out. But thanks for joining us. And again, if you're interested in the slides, just send me an email. Happy to send them to you.
Thanks, Carrie. Thanks everybody for joining us. Yeah, as Carrie mentioned, you go ahead and send him an email. We hope to see you guys at Virtual Demo Fest next month. We have some more webinars coming up, so keep on the lookout on our website for those, and we'll see you guys soon. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks, Carrie.
Thanks. Bye-bye.